Hi guys, welcome to today's live class, the last one. Um, Hope you are excited to get into blueprints. So yeah, we've come a long way from the very first class up until now. We've covered how to import our files from, or rather export from 3ds Max to Unreal Engine via FBX and Datasmith. We've learned how to import our files into Unreal Engine, how to create lighting, add materials, and also create renders and animations. So in this final session, we're going to cover how to make our projects more interactive or interactive, and then I'll show you how to export it as a standalone application so that you can run it yourself, share it with people. So if you have a project that you want to make interactive to get your client's attention or use for a presentation, this is a very good way to go about that. So we're going to cover that, and then also at the end we'll cover like best practices in terms of how to make your project size smaller when you're done with a project. I'll show you which files to go into to optimize. I'll show you how to migrate your assets from one project to another. you know Good quality of life things to do after you're done with every project. Cool. So let's begin today's class. Blueprints. um Yes, so today we're going to be building these three things. You've seen them before in previous classes. We're going to change the lighting scenario from day to night. We're also going to make a simple door that opens when you approach it and closes once you move away from it. And the last one is going to be a TV where you approach, press the button, it comes on, and then you can press the same button and it goes off. So simple but very powerful interactive stuff for this project. So what is a blueprint exactly? Let's just run through some basics. So a blueprint is Unreal Engine's visual scripting system. It allows you to create gameplay and interactions by connecting nodes together without writing traditional code. So I know you've heard this a lot where people say you are not writing code per se. So you are, but it's being done in the background. What we have with Blueprint is the visual interface or visual scripting. So as you are connecting nodes behind the scenes, C++ is doing its thing. So because Unreal Engine is based on C++ language, so this is just something that non-coders like myself and yourself, I'm assuming, this will be easier for us to work with as against typing code. And the good thing about learning blueprints is, to a large extent, you are actually learning the principles of coding, so that eventually if you decide to want to learn how to code either inside Unreal Engine or outside, some things will not be brand new to you essentially. All right, cool. um there are broadly two kinds of blueprints in Unreal Engine. We have the blueprint class and we have the level blueprint. As we start to make the blueprints, you will see the differences, but essentially level blueprint is one that is used within the level, in the sense that those blueprints can't be migrated to another project, or rather they live inside that level. Whereas a blueprint class, these are self-contained blueprints that can be migrated to other levels, other projects. So it will make more sense as we begin. So we are back in our interior apartment. As usual, it's like there's always something I'm trying to fix before we get into the main class, but this will take just 5 minutes. So I noticed something from last week's class. If you notice, the shadow from the tree not looking so good. It's not looking, in fact, it's looking terrible. So how do we fix this? But first of all, let me explain what is going on. See if I can get something better. Okay, this is good enough. So in this project, we are using ray tracing, hardware ray tracing, and part of what that gives us is ray trace shadows from the directional light. So if I click on it and search for ray, Right now, it says cast ray trace shadows. We are using the project settings, which is on by default. We can either set it to enabled or disabled, but we'll get to that. Now, the reason we are having this problem with the shadows is ray tracing doesn't work for every single actor or mesh in our scene, depending on how they are created, some intricacies or complexities. For example, this tree is a megascans tree. It's a skeletal mesh, not a static mesh, meaning you can add animations to this tree, like wind animation, things like that. It has like bones and skeletons. Um, it's made up of a lot of smaller parts. Um, Obviously, very what's the word now? Dense model, a very high poly count. So sometimes all these things come together to not give us such a good shadow representation. If I click on lit and go to Lumen and go to Lumen scene, you see that this is exactly what is being cast, right? Let me go back to lit. So that's the approximation. And that is the issue we also have with the sofa, right? So if you remember, we had that issue before where the shadows, it was having like some self-shadowing. Let me think I fixed it, but let me check. Um, Mesh LOD colorization. Okay, yes, that reminds me. Let me go back to the static mesh, right click. So let me enable nanite. So the solution I gave previously was either to, well, I mean, you have to disable nanite and add your LODs, which is one solution. But another way to fix the shadows is to click on the sun and change it from use project settings to disabled. So we are no longer using ray trace shadows, and you will see that that gives us, let me bring this down a bit, that gives us nice shadows. Now, ray trace shadows are better, give you better quality, but it's also expensive. So if your, this is part of another optimization tip for your project. If your project is lagging or you want to make it more performant, perform more or perform better, then you can disable ray trace shadows. So let me give an example of how it works here. If I change it back to project settings, you can see that the shadows are softer, but once I disable it, shadows are harder. So from this distance, you really can't tell. You really can't tell. So it's not a deal breaker, but yeah, you can disable it if, for example, you are using Megascan trees. If you are bringing in your own tree from 3ds Max or any other software, this issue most likely won't be happening. So that's something to note. And as same also, because I've disabled it, I'm no longer having that self-shadowing issue on the mesh. So that's another option. If you don't want to use the traditional LOD method, then you can just disable cast ray trace shadows, and that will fix that self-shadowing. If I enable it or change it back to project settings, then you have that issue. All right, good. That is all for fixing stuff, and let's get straight into today's class. We want to make three blueprints, one for the door, one for the TV, and one that will help us change our levels from day to night. So let's start with the simplest one, which is our door. Okay, before we do that, let's just look at what a blueprint looks like. So I'm going to start with the level blueprints. I'm going to click on this icon here, open, where are you? Open level blueprint. Okay, opened on my second monitor. Going to drag this in. And what we have here, so the first thing to notice when you open the level blueprint, at the very bottom it will say level blueprint. The other one, class blueprint, will just say blueprint, so that's one indicator. So over here we have in the my blueprints panel, this is where you add components to your blueprint. You can add variables. We will get into this as we go along. This is your graph view where we plot our logic, and then everything we select as we work has you will find out in the details panel. So can't really see much here until we actually start making something, but let me close this. Next is the blueprint class. I'm going to make a new folder in the content browser, type blueprints. Now to make a blueprint class, you right click and just simply click on blueprint class. Now there are several or different categories, right? Almost anything can be a blueprint, but these are like the most common categories. I'm not going to go so deep into it. All of what we want to do today we'll be using the actors category. So let me give you an example. The first person character we are using to move around was made from the character category for the blueprint. What enables us control that character is made from the player controller. So before I continue, let me close this. If we go back to our world setting, if you remember when we set up this game mode override, we have our pawn class, which is the character. We have our player controller, which is the first person player controller. So these two are important, very necessary for us to move around in our scene. Without those two, this will not be possible. So again, we are not really, that is beyond the scope of this class. So let me go back to the blueprint folder, right click and click on blueprint class. Want to select actor. I'm just going to leave it like that. Now, once I open it, it's a bit different from the level blueprint. One is that you don't get a viewport. Level blueprint doesn't have a viewport, but the blueprint class you do have a viewport. You still have the event graph like we do in the level blueprint. You have the components, or rather the blueprint section, and now we have an additional section for components. Then we still have the details panel. And then yeah, at the bottom it just says blueprint. All right, good. So let us begin. Okay, so to create the blueprint for this door, again, I'm still going to use this as an example. Let's just do something from scratch. I'm going to add a component. You can add a lot of things to your blueprint. You can add static meshes, you can add lights, you can add, the list is a lot. So right now I want to search for static mesh. So with that clicked, in the details panel, I can see that there's a static mesh section, and I can click on the drop down and search for any of the static meshes that are currently in this project. So I'm just going to type door. So we have the SM underscore glass door. We only brought in one component. It was an instance in 3ds Max, if you remember. So with that done, I'm going to go to the viewport, and now we have our door here. Going to compile. Whenever you make any changes in a blueprint, you need to compile to make sure there are no errors, or just to ensure that it is done, and then you can save. So if I move this door, for example, I need to compile again. I mean, you don't have to compile every single time you make a change, but it's good to compile as often as possible. Now, there's one thing I want to quickly fix here, is the fact that we don't have materials on the door. This is important because eventually, if we decide to migrate this to another project, there won't be any materials. And if you remember in our material class, I said the reason why it's not showing here is because we did not apply the material in the static mesh editor. So let's quickly do that. I'm going to select the door, Control E to open. I'm going to dock it here. I mean, in the blueprint, you also have the materials here. We could have applied it here too, but let's just do that here. So very simple. Search and then apply. Same material, search, apply, search, apply. Good. Now in the blueprint, the materials are there. Okay. So to carry on making this blueprint, or I mean, bringing a blueprint in here, I'm going to duplicate, or rather, let's name this first of all, door 1 for now. I'll duplicate this, door 2. So we have two static meshes, and we would need to mirror this. So I'm going to untick the padlock and mirror on the x-axis -1. I'm just eyeballing it for now. Select two of them, move it here. This icon here represents the root node. So the root node doesn't have any kind of transform, it just has scale. But what we want is the transform values from the two doors. So I'm just using my to just centralize it, compile, save, and then I can bring in the door into my project. Now, there are some potential issues with this. Number one, it's not accurate because again, I was using my eyes to gauge this. If I knew the exact dimension of the door, I could, type the location the left door is meant to be and the right door, but that is just a lot of work. Also, placing this door in the same exact location too will be a bit difficult. So I did all this to show you that there's a much easier and faster way to do this. So I'm going to delete the blueprint as well. So sometimes, even if I know that this blueprint is no longer in the scene and I want to delete it, it still tells me I have to forcefully delete it because it's telling me that there are references. So what I can just do is try to right click on content, update redirector references, and that will delete the references. And then let's go back to blueprint, delete. Sometimes it doesn't work. I will just delete it forcefully because I know there's nothing that's attached to it. Now, the better way or the most streamlined way to convert this to a blueprint is to select the two doors, click on the blueprint icon, and you see convert selection to blueprint class. So I'm going to click on that, and we have three options. New subclass, which is great because this only applies to one static mesh. And again, this makes a subclass of, or rather, it converts the door to a subclass, um, a type of blueprint, which is not what we are going for. A child actor is better, but um, based on what you've seen in the previous blueprints, right? You have the two doors as components. This will make them actors instead of components, and we don't want that. What we want is harvest components. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to ensure the path is blueprint, and I'm just going to rename this to BP underscore glass door. Remove this and select. So that does two things. Number one, it creates a blueprint for us with the doors properly in the right location, and then in the scene, it converts this to the blueprint immediately. So if I go to the outliner, select this, you see now it's now the BP glass door. Another way you can be 100% sure, can right click and enable type, so you can see the different types of actors we have in our scene. Right now this says edit BP glass door. All right, good. So I'm just going to save and close this. To open the blueprint, simple, select it, Control E, that will open it. In the outliner, you can also click on edit, and that will open the blueprint. And then finally, you can always open it from the content browser. Perfect. Okay, so let's again look at the interface. We have the viewport that shows us the door or the components. I'm going to just rename this because they're quite long. Just going to remove the static mesh components. So SM glass door L for left and R for right. Good. Um, what else? And then when you select them, you have your details panel here. All right. Now what's next? Or what do you want to do next? I'm going to build this in a way that makes sense. Basically, step by step. I'm not basically that there's a way I'll build this right now, but because you are learning, we're going to take it in sequential order. So you see what that means. Now we want to set up this in such a way that the moment the character gets close to the blueprint, the door opens, and when the character moves back, the door closes. So how do we set that up? We can do that with something called a collision. So I'm going to add a new component. I'm going to scroll down till we see collisions. So we have box, capsule, and sphere. For this example, we'll use a box collision. I'm going to move it to the center and then extend it like so. Now, while I'm doing this in the blueprint, it also takes effect in the level. Now you can, depending on what you are trying to do, it might actually be easier to make the changes in the level as against in the blueprint. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to compile and save. I can click on the blueprint, it selects everything. Now in the details panel, you have the same components that we did in the blueprint, and I've just seen one mistake, so let me go and fix that. Now it's a good thing that I actually made the mistake. So when you're bringing in components, ensure that before you bring it in, you have nothing selected or you have the base or the root node selected. What I'm saying is, right now I am suspecting I had the left door selected when I added the collision, and right now the collision is attached to the door, which I don't want. So I will just drag this to the shared root and click on attach, so it's a separate mesh. So next time, either have nothing selected or just click on the shared root and then add whatever component you want to add to avoid that issue. Because if you had done that and the door, when we set up the door to open, the collision would move with it and that would mess up the blueprint. Okay, so back in the level, I can click on the box collision and actually adjust it here. Now what you'll notice is whatever changes I make here do not automatically have an effect in the blueprint. So to do that, once okay, so you know what, let's adjust this to the size I want. Once I'm happy with this, I would click on this icon. It's the same thing as the blueprint icon here. Click on this and click apply instance changes to blueprint. So click, and if I go back to the blueprint, it has applied it. So you can work interchangeably. Now we want that when the character approaches or overlaps this collision, the door opens, and when the character goes away, it closes. So how do we set that up? Let's go back to our blueprint. I'm going to select the box collision, scroll down in the details panel, and you will see a lot of events. Let's go back to the event graph. So an event is something that starts or triggers an action. Whenever any blueprint you make from scratch has three events. Events begin play. This means whatever happens, this will kick off at the start of the game. Actor begin overlap is when an actor overlaps or when this actor overlaps something, and then event tick. This is something that happens every second of the game. So right now we don't need any of these three, so I'm just going to move them down. Let's go back to, let's click on the box. So we want to bring in two events: on component begin overlap and on component end overlap. So click on the first one. You know what, I can just delete all these three. Click on the box again and bring in the on component end overlap. Perfect. Okay, good. So what happens next? We want that on component begin overlap, meaning when the character overlaps this component, we want the door to open. So I'm going to get a reference to the left door and the right door. I'm going to select both of them and drag it inside. Okay, and so let's start with the left door, right? When the overlap begin happens, okay, so let's fix something quickly and you'll understand why in a minute. In 3ds Max, this door was the original one. As you can see, everything is zeroed out, and then this one I rotated it 180 degrees. That's because it's a symmetrical object on both axes. But in this case, I want to zero this out and instead use the scale -1, so that way both doors are starting at an angle of 0. It's just much easier to work with as against one starting at 0 and another one at 180. So the left door starts at 0, and when the character overlaps the collision, I want this door to go 90 degrees. The right door is going to go -90. Good. So left is 90. Let's go back. Let's start with the left door. So what we want to do is we want to drag out from the pin and search for set relative rotation. Set relative rotation. For the right door, I'm going to do the same. Drag out and search for set relative rotation. Okay, so let's start with the begin overlap. I will drag out from the pin, executable pin here, drag this into here, and we want to rotate the left door 90 degrees. So this will be 90. We're not rotating the X and Y, so this can be left as 0. So when the character overlaps the box, the left door rotates 90 degrees. So we're going to do the same for the right. We're going to drag this connect like this and set the right door to rotate -90 degrees. Cool. So blueprint logic always flows from left to right. So the event kicks off and then flows like this. Good. So let's test this. Or you know what? Let's just finish this logic. So when the character ends overlap, so when it escapes or goes away from the collision, it's going to go back to 0. So I will simply duplicate, drag this in, and set both of them back to 0. Another thing we can just do to make this better, we can use the same node. You can bring this is a reference, so it doesn't matter if you can use one and connect to several places. It's all the same thing. So I think this just looks nicer. All right, good. So let's test this. I'm going to press play. And one more thing before we do that, just so that we can see this while we are testing. Let's go back to the blueprint, viewport. This collision by default and the way it's meant to work, you're not meant to see it in the viewport when you're playing your game. But for the sake of testing, I'm going to select it, and right now it's set to hidden in game. I'm going to disable that just so that we can see it. So press play. Once we approach, the door opens. Once we exit, the door closes. So that's an overlap event. Again, let me move this to the side a bit, or let me move it out of the way first. Let me go back to the event graph. Let me move this up here, move this back. Now you see as the character overlaps, one more thing, I'm going to change this debug to the glass door. This is just to show you the flow of events. So as the character overlaps, you see it shoots out from event begin overlap and goes all the way down. So as many nodes as you connect to that event is going to take effect. And once we escape or end overlap, the bottom one shoots. So that is that. Making progress. Now we're almost done with this blueprint. Like I said, this is just a very basic blueprint. What we want to do now is to make it look better, because right now the door is just snapping open, snapping shut, not looking so nice. We want to make it open over a period of time. So let's say 1 second or 2 seconds. And to do that, we need to use a timeline. Good. So it's a new node to introduce. Go to right click and search for time. timeline. You to scroll down to the very bottom and you see add timeline. I'm going to name this open door. It can be any name, just so that you know what the timeline is doing. So how does this work? I think first of all, let me connect it first. I'm going to connect it to play. I'm going to connect updates. So the way this works is once the character overlaps, it's going to play the timeline. We don't set up anything yet. And while whatever is going on happens, it's going to update over a period of time. Now to set that up, we're going to double click on the timeline, and that opens up a new tab beside the event graph. So we're still in our blueprint, we're just inside the timeline. Okay, so what we want the timeline to adjust is this Z axis, the angle we've put here, that's the 90 degrees. So what we want to do is add a float value that will affect just the Z axis. So once you see it in action, to make sense. I'm going to click on track and going to add float. Now there are other we have vector, we have event, we have color. Vector, for example, is 3 float values, so it's like X, Y, and Z. So if I wanted to adjust more than one value on that mesh, I would use a vector track. But because I want to adjust just one value, I'm using a float track. I'm going to call this rotate Z. Now I think it's just best to see what happens. I'm going to right click in the timeline or track. I'm going to add a new curve. Now when I select this, I'm going to set the time to 0, value to 0. Okay. Now I want the door to open over a time of 1 second. I think 1 second is fine. I'm going to right click, add a new, sorry, not curve key, add a new key. I'm going to set the time to 1, and the value we want to adjust is the Z axis, right? So I'm going to type 90 here. Now we can't see much. That's because we've gone way above the value of 1. So I'll just click on these two buttons to zoom to what we can see. So this is the first point, 0, 0, second point, value of 0, and value of 1 and 90. So over the time of 1 second, it's going to rotate 90 degrees. Good. So I'm going to compile, save, go back to my event graph. Remember, we named this rotate underscore Z. That now appears under rotate underscore, it appears here as a flow track. Now, how do we connect this to this, right? They are a bit different. Now, before we go any further, let me just also introduce you to a little bit to variables, right? Variables essentially are containers of information. So as you go along, you will see some of them in action. Right now, we don't have any variables, but if I click on the plus button to add a variable, what I want to point out is that we have different kinds of variables. A Boolean variable is essentially an if statement, so it's a yes or no. Did this happen or not, right? And they're all color coded. So over time, you get to know, what is what. If you look at this rotator, it's what color is it? Is it cyan or light purple or something? You can see that it's similar to this color because this is a rotation value. So every color here means something. This light green is a float value, so we can create a float variable and plug it in here. So that's just a very, 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 very brief intro into variables. Now, to connect these two together, I am going to split this into 3 separate parts. So again, if you remember when we worked on materials, where I showed you how to use the append node to combine a constant vector into a constant 3 vector. So the same principle applies here. This is essentially 3 float nodes combined together to form this rotation. So what I want to do is split it. I'm going to right click on this pin and click on split struts pin. As you can see now, it gives you 3 separate values for the X, Y, and Z, and you can see that the colors now match because these are float values. A float is essentially a number that has a decimal point. right? So you can see every number will always have a decimal point in front of it. Now I want to drive the rotation with this Z, and I'll plug it here. And let's now see what happens. Let's just start with the first door. Press play, overlap. I can see that the left door opens gradually over 1 second. So the same thing for the right. I'll right click, split, and connect this to the Z. Okay, compile, play, overlap. Yes, so this is a potential issue. Remember that this was 90 degree minus 90. So in order to fix this, instead of creating, well, there are two things we can do. We can either create a new float, right, and have minus 90. But a better way, in my opinion, of doing this is drag this out, search for multiply. Now we're going to multiply this value by -1. So that will negate the 90 degrees value. I'll plug it in here. And essentially that will give us the negative value. So press play, overlap, and now the door opens in the right direction. Okay, cool. So how do we do the end overlap? Now we don't have to duplicate the timeline again and do the same thing. What the good thing about the timeline is that we have a reverse node. So what I simply need to do is connect the end begin overlap into reverse, and I can get rid of these ones. Essentially it just goes forward and backwards. So let's see. Oh yes, I made a mistake and still need these references. So this is what I should have deleted, and these ones can stay here. So that's why compiling is good. You know if you have any errors before you start playing the game. Play, overlap, end overlap, begin overlap, end overlap. Now there's another issue you would see. It doesn't close immediately when we end overlap, and that's because I forgot to adjust something in the timeline. So let's go back to the timeline. You know that I want I want the door to open and close in 1 second. At the very top here, you see the length. By default, every timeline has the default length of 5 seconds. So that's why you can see that it extends beyond 1 second to 5. So I'm going to change this to 1. I can see now that the length of the timeline is 1. Compile. And that thing I want to do here to make the animation of the door better is to select these two keys, right click, change it from linear to auto. So we have this nice smoothing in and smoothing out. Again, compile, save, and let's play. Open, close. Very nice. So I can come in here because the moment I end overlap, it will close me in. But once I approach, it opens again. So you can decide to make the collision bigger or smaller depending on what you want. But I think that is fine. I'm going to change the visibility back to hidden in game. Compile, save, and yes, we've basically done our first blueprint. Two more things, more than two more things, but let's say you actually want a delay when you exit the collision. Let's say you don't want the door to close immediately. So let me introduce a new node called delay. Just going to right click, type delay. So when the character begins overlap, opens the door, when it ends overlap, you don't want it to close immediately. So I'm going to connect the delay node here. And let's say I want it to delay by 2 seconds. Play. So open. So once I end overlap, it takes 2 seconds before the door closes. So I'm going to introduce as many nodes as possible. So now One other thing, maybe you have any question in this in terms of how did I know, what notes to use. The thing about blueprints is if you're just starting, it's like learning a new language. You won't know anything, right? You have to just take things for what they are, but as you go along, it's like a puzzle. Towards the end of the puzzle, it starts to make sense. You're able to do, put the pieces in quickly. So there's no way to really know what to do until you start to study, and make mistakes and all of that. So I said, let me just put that out there. Now, there are a lot of things we can do to make these blueprints way better. This is like really, 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 really basic. I can't stress that enough. And I'll just do one of that. Now, if it's a bit, it doesn't make sense, or you can't understand it, just watch this video again and practice again. I'll show you it will make sense. Now, let's say I want this door to open 80 degrees instead of 90, or rather I want to have control over the angle of the rotation when the character overlaps, right? To do that, I would need to go into the timeline and always change this value to 90, right? That's quite cumbersome. The good thing about blueprints is that you can make your blueprints as modular as possible so that they are easy to reuse and make adjustments. So to fix that issue, let me show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to select this, change the value from 90 to 1. Okay, again, click on the zoom to vertical fit, or zoom to fit vertical and horizontal. So essentially, we have at the bottom time of 0, value of 0, at the top value of 1, time of 1. Essentially, I want to normalizing the timeline. So once that's done, let's just see what happens. Obviously, the moment I approach, it's only going to rotate 1 degree. It barely moved, but I'm sure you saw it. Now, instead of having that 90-degree inside the timeline, I'm going to have it outside here. So that way I can easily change the angle here and instead of having to go into the timeline. So it's the same way we had this multiply node for the minus. I'm going to add a multiply node. Multiply, connect this here, and then type 90. I will simply duplicate this, hold down Control to remove this one, connect here, and this should give us the same result. So what we've just done is, instead of having the 90 degrees inside the timeline, we've brought it outside. So we are multiplying 1 by 90, and then the same 1 by 90, and then by minus 1 to make it negative. We can as well put minus 90 and remove this, but you see why I'm leaving it like this. So let's compile, test, and see if it works. So as expected, with a 2-second delay, it closes. Perfect. Now, this is better, right? But again, this is still a bit cumbersome. So always have to come in here and type 90 degrees twice. Better way is to use a variable. So let me delete this one. I'm going to add a variable. I'm going to call it door angle. I'm going to change it from boolean to a float to match these float values. Now when I select it, by default you don't see any nothing in the details panel. You need to compile and then you see the value here. So by default it's always 0. I'm going to type 90 and I can simply drag this and connect it in here, or I can drag it, get, and connect like this. So this way I just type the angle once and it affects both of them. So let's try 60, compile, play. Once I approach, the door only opens 60 degrees. Good. let's say I want this to actually open the other way, right? I will then type minus, let's say minus 90. Now there's no issue with this door because this door is entirely symmetrical on both the X and the Y axis, so that's fine. Approach, and you see it opens the other way. Obviously this won't work because the tree is there, but this is how you can simply adjust blueprints, and then it closes. Okay, I'm going to set this back to 90. Let's go a step further, right? I want to, because now anytime I want to make adjustments to this blueprint, I need to open it and change the number, which is fine, right? We've gone from adjusting it in our timeline to adjusting it manually to making a variable to adjusting it only once. Now what you can even do further than that is to click on this eye icon. Right now it's closed. If I click on this, what we've done now is that we've exposed the variable, and that's the same thing as clicking instance editable. So if I disable it, the eye closes. If I enable it, the eye opens. So what does this do? Compile, save. Let's go back to our scene. Now if I select the blueprint, see that we now have the door angle here, so I can actually adjust the angle here if I want. And the good thing now is I can make different copies of the door, and each one can have its own separate angle. So let me do something ridiculous, 120, and let's test. Okay, so I approach 60 degrees, I approach 120 degrees. So this is the power of blueprints and the power of variables. So this is just an added bonus to show you how you can really start to expand your blueprints. It's all about thinking about what you want to do and how to make it easy to use or easy to work with. If this was a one-time thing and you never plan to maybe migrate to another project, or you are 100% sure that you want it to leave it at 90 degrees, then all of this is not necessary. But this is just, I'm just showing you what is possible, just trying to expand and open your mind. Okay, so with that, we are completely done with our blueprint for the door. Cool. Next, let us work on the levels. So essentially what I want to do is press start. I want to press 1 on the keyboard to toggle from day to night, and I want to press 2 on the keyboard to toggle the mood lights on and off. So how do we go about that? Remember, we have our persistent level and we have 3 other levels, so day, night, and day mode and night. Right now these two are always loaded because there's no green icon in front of them. I'm going to right click on both of them, change streaming method to blueprint, and you see that we have the 3 green dots in front of them. What this means is when I press play now, our scene is going to be completely black because by default when it's set to blueprint, the level doesn't come on. Right, so we're going to fix that right now. For this, we're going to work in our level blueprint for this one. So I'm going to click on this icon, open the level blueprint. Good. Okay, so we want to load the levels as soon as the game starts, right? And to do that, we need to right click and search for load stream level by name. Okay, so I'll click on that. I'm going to duplicate it 3 times because we have 3 levels to load, and I'm just going to connect them like this. So connect. The moment you connect it, this comment disappears. It's better because it's not attached to anything, right? So at event begin play, I want to load the day, night, and mood light level. So right now the level name is set to none. We need to come back, go to our levels, and copy the exact names. Without that, it will not work. So paste. I'm selecting each one, F2, copy, paste, and then lastly for the mood lights. Perfect. Good. So we've loaded them, right? Let's compile and play, but it's still black because we need to set one of them to be visible. So typically you start your projects or any game with daytime. So I'm going to enable make visible after load. So press play, and now we have our daytime showing. Okay, I've noticed an issue, and let's see what's going on. So right now you can see that our character is starting from the center of the room as against where we have our player start. Let me see. Okay, it's still at the center of the room. I think I have an idea because this has happened to me before. So this is happening because the before this level was set to persistent, right? When I right click, it was set to always loaded, and I'm assuming I brought this into the scene, into the level when the lighting day level was the active one. And now that I've changed this to blueprint, it's messing up. It's not active in the scene when the game starts, if that makes sense, right? The persistent level is immediately in the level once the game starts. And because we are loading these things after the game starts, the character cannot find this what's it called now, player start. So let me show you what I mean. I'll right click on day. Let me deselect everything. Right click on day level and click on select actors. As you can see, as I suspected, this is inside the day level. So I'm going to select this, right click on the persistent level and move selected actors to level. So I'm 200% sure that that will fix it. So this is why I said it's very important to ensure that your actors, your meshes are in the right level when you're making them. Again, this was something that the first time it happened, it took me a very long time to figure it out because I had no idea what the problem was. So sometimes this is how Unreal Engine can trip you up, but over time, these mistakes they start to build up resistance and a library in your head of, okay, these are things you need to look out for. So over time, you're able to troubleshoot easily and better. It's also a good idea to make notes of any potential issue you've had and how you solved it. That way you don't forget and you can always have a good reference point. All right, cool. So what next? Okay, now we've loaded the day level. Next thing I want to do is to, like I said, have the press 1 on the keyboard to toggle between day and night, and then press 2 on the keyboard to just toggle the mode light on and off. So let us first of all add the keyboard inputs. I'm going to right click, search for keyboard. These are all the inputs based on your key. We are looking for 1. I will simply duplicate this, and in the details panel I can just click on this keyboard icon and type 2, and that will activate 2, right? Okay, so when we press 1, I want to flip to the night, and when I press it again I want to flip to the day. So how do we do this? We can use a simple node called flip-flop. Again, I'm introducing you to new nodes. So I'm going to drag out from here, search for, or you can just right click and search for flip, and that is here, flip-flop. So what this node does is when you press it, it shoots out something from A. When you press again, shoots out B, and it just keeps on going, up and down, back and forth. Okay, next thing we want to do is I want to right click and type streaming get streaming level, and I'm going to drag off from this and type should look for should be visible. So there are two options, get or set. We want to set it, we want to set the value. So I'll click on set. Again, just it will make sense in a bit. So we've loaded all three levels at the beginning of the game. We've set the day level to be visible. So what this toggling will do is we're going to be toggling the visibility of each level. So to do that, you get streaming level. Again, we need to copy the name inside this. Now you can see how this is starting to become a bit cumbersome, having to copy this name in multiple places. This is relatively a small blueprint we're going to make, but if we're going to have to plug in names a lot of the time, then we can come in and make a new blueprint, a new variable rather. So I'm going to click on variable. I'm just going to call this lighting day, change the type to the same color as this, and you see it's a name, level name, light purple name. Okay, going to duplicate this, just Control and D to duplicate, ensure I'm using the right spelling, F2, duplicate again, good. So I'll just plug this for day, night, and mode. Okay, and I'll do the same for here. Okay, good. So when we press A, we want the day level to not be visible. So I'm going to duplicate this. And this time I want the night level to be visible. And when I press again, it's going to flop to the second one. Just bring this like this. Simply duplicate all of this. So again, press A or press the first time, it goes through A, turns the daytime invisible, night visible, and then here we'll do the we'll reverse it. Compile, play. Okay, why is our project not visible? Aha. Okay, so I made a mistake. After renaming the levels, I need to, this is just the name. We need to actually give it the right value. So in the details panel, we need to put that name here as well. So let me quickly do that. Okay, good. Compile, save, play. Again, let me move this to the bottom here so that we can see what's going on. Now, when I press 1, changes to night, you don't see the flow because to see this in effect, you have to change this to the current blueprint, or you would see something in the drop down. That way, you see it in action. So when I press 1, it goes through A. When I press 1 again, it goes through B. So that's the flip flop node for you in action. So that's the same thing we're going to do for the mood lights, and it's much simpler. So I will just duplicate this one on top. In fact, these two, duplicate. So when I press A, when I press the first time, I want the mood lights to be visible. And then when I press it again, I want it to be invisible. Simple. Compile, save. Let's see what we have. So, excuse me. One will give us day and night. and 2 will give us the mood lines on and off. Cool. We are almost done with this. The last thing we want to adjust is the materials on the static meshes. If you notice, when I change the level to night, the lights do not come on. And remember that we're able to adjust them using the variant set that we made. Let me just open it again, double click to come on. So we have two separate ones, one for the ceiling lights and then one for the mood lights. Okay, so we are going to see how to bring this into our blueprint. Currently, we are working in the level blueprint, right? And to communicate with this variant set, we need to add this to the level. So I'm going to drag this into the level. Now we don't see, it doesn't have any mesh or anything that we can use to visually see it. I'll go to the outliner and it's obviously in the project, but we can't see it. So instead of always having to come to the outliner, what we can do is simply in the details panel, click on add, and let's search for text. This is just so that we can have something visual to look at. So I'm just going to move this to the wall here. And in the details panel, change the text to LVS underscore lights, level variant set lights. So that way we know what we are looking at. Can change the size to 20. So that way we can just select it and we know that it's in the scene, just so that there's a visual representation. One more thing, select the lights, select the text, I said lights, variant sets, and then ensure that it is hidden in game so that when we play, the text is not showing. Good. So it's in our level now. We want to get a reference to it in the level blueprint. To do that, ensure it's selected. Then in the level blueprint, I'm going to right click and you see we have create reference to LVS underscore lights. That's because it is selected in our project. So I'll click on this. Okay. So let us start with the very beginning. Say for example, in your project, you are working on stuff and you leave the lights on, which is fine. Ideally, you want this to be turned on off, but let's say you leave it on. When I press play, the lights are on and that doesn't work for what we want. So it's always best to have all the control in Blueprint. So at the beginning, we want to ensure that the, what's it called now? The states are set to off. So I'm going to drag out and search for switch on variant by name. I'm going to drag this here. Now the variant set name, let's go back to, let's open this. The variant set name is night lights, the first one. F2 to copy, paste it here. And then the variant name is going to be off. Capital, it has to be the exact same letter, it's case sensitive. Now I'm going to compile and play. Now even though the lights were on in the viewport, they are off here, but you can see that the lights are still on for the mood lights. So I'm going to do the same thing, or yeah, let me see. Can I, okay, quickly, I'm just testing something. Ignore this. Okay, so I wanted to confirm if I could connect two at the same time. It's not possible. So I'm going to duplicate. And then the second one is lights mode. So copy, paste. Again, want it to be off. It needs the same target. I typically don't like, except for things like this, I like to see my nodes properly. So I'll double click to make a reroute node and just set it up like this. Quick tip, if you want these two to be on the same line, just select them and press Q. That will arrange it like that. Good. So now when we press play, they are both off, even if they are on in the level, so that way you have more control in using your blueprints to control what you actually want when the game starts. It removes any potential mistake that could happen. Imagine packaging this now and you didn't set this up and the lights are on when the game starts, even though we're not in the night level. Good. Let us convert this to variables as well. You can see that this is not the same color. If I hover over this, you see it says name. If I put my mouse over it, it says string. String name, um, string name text. They are all text, but they have different uses. So this is a string. So I'm just going to copy night lights. Right click. Okay. So before, right, I clicked on variable, put the name in, change this to string, compile, put the name here, and then I can drag it in here, right? A faster way is simply, let me copy this, copy, just right click and promote to variable. It will create the right category. I'll just simply put the name I want, compile, and then put, okay, the name is already there, good. And then the same thing, we're going to create one for off, one for on. So I'll right click, promote to variable off, and the value is off. I'll duplicate this, on, compile, and then on, capital letters, good. So the very last step is when we press 1 and we change this from day to night, what we want to do now is I'm going to duplicate. We want to switch on the variant level name from off to on. So in fact, you know what, I will just copy this to duplicate, connect like this. Yeah, I forgot this one can connect to both of them because they are both off. This time I'll bring in on, connect to both of them. Actually, we do not need the mood lights. So yeah, it's just for the ceiling lights. Okay, so this comes on when we change from day to night, and then I'll duplicate this. This will go back off when we go back to the daytime. So plugin off, can use the same night lights for both of them, and the same target for the level variant set. So let's test this first of all. Press play, lights are off, press 1, press 1 again, so you can see it works as intended. Good. Now for the mood lights, again at the beginning it's set to off. So when the mood lights are on, I'm going to set this to be on, duplicate. When the mood lights are off, it's going to be set back to off. We need to copy this reference or duplicate and connect like so. Okay, let's see if everything works as intended. Let me maximize this. Okay, good. So 1, 1, 2, 2. Perfect. Awesome. So I hope this is making sense. As you can see, our graph has become suddenly full, but this is just the way, it's little by little. It's also it can also happen that you might open this in a week and feel a bit overwhelmed, it's only normal. What our advice is, do this as many times as possible till, not like you are trying to memorize, but it will get to a point where the logic starts to make sense, because right now you're learning a lot of new nodes, new principles, so it's a lot to take in at once. But the more you practice, it becomes second nature. Some things start to make sense even when you've not used them before. You can start to reason some things automatically. You know that if you want to plug in something here, this is going to be a variable of the boolean type, which is red. So over time, starts to make more and more sense. So with this, we are done with our second blueprint. We've made for the door, we've made for the lighting, and the last one we want to do right now is for the TV. I left the TV for last because it has some delicacies or intricacies that must be followed for it to work properly. Okay, save. First thing I'm going to do in the content browser, right click, make a new folder, I'll call it movies. The video we're going to use for this blueprint has to live in the movie folder. Without that, when you package your game, it will not work, right? If that's just the way Unreal Engine is set up. Okay, so I've made my movie folder. This will be very similar to when we made materials for the sequencer, but let us now focus on the blueprint. First of all, let's see, should I make the blueprint first? Okay, let's make the blueprint first. So this one is very simple. We can as well come here, convert selection to blueprint class, and click on harvest. But let's just do it manually, just so that you see the process of how this can be done as well. I'm going to right click, go to blueprints, right click, make a blueprint class. We're using an actor, BP underscore TV. We only have just one static mesh in the component, so I'm going to open this, dock this here. So these are default scene routes with nothing selected. I'm going to add a static mesh component. I'm going to call this TV, and in the details panel, I'm going to search for TV, and that's our static mesh. Again, we did not apply the material in the editor, which is why there are no materials here. So I'm quickly going to do that. Open up the TV in the editor. Expand this. So search for TV body, apply, search. Okay, now, okay, you know what? I think, okay, that's fine. This TV material, right, is from the sequencer. Okay, and we need a different material to be on this TV for the blueprint. Okay, again, it doesn't matter what material you have while you're in the scene. When we start working on the blueprint for the TV, we can override everything. So that's why it's very important to do some of these things inside the blueprint. You see what I mean when we get this. I'm still going to use the same material. So undo, search, apply. The very last one, which I forgot to apply in the previous lesson, is for this mesh, more like the indicator when the TV is on or off. So I don't think we have a material for that. I'm quickly going to search, duplicate, call it TV indicator. I can't seem to type. I can't talk when I'm typing, so it's funny. Going to leave it as black as well. So when the TV is on, it's going to turn red. When the TV is off, it's going to turn black. So we'll see how to set that up as well. Okay, and just save all. Good. So we have our blueprint, but this is still static mesh. So how do we do this? Two ways actually. Because it's just a simple mesh, I can drag this in. Again, the scale is different because I'm suspecting that in 3ds Max I did not scale this down, even though I did not reset the X form, even though this is the size I want. So we can as well just increase the size for this so that it is the same size. Good. Okay. Where was I? So we can select this static mesh in the location section. Right click, copy the location, select the blueprint, right click, paste, and you have them in the same location, and you can delete the static mesh. That's one option. Second option is select the blueprint itself. Now select the static mesh, right click, and say replace selected actors with the BPTV. So that will replace the static mesh with the BPTV. And how do I know that it's a blueprint? If I select it, you can see that it says blueprint. If I go to the outliner, it's now the blueprint. The one thing, the reason why, or one thing to take note of when you do this option. So let me go back, right? This one we made and brought it manually has the name BP underscore TV. But because we are replacing this mesh, it does not replace the name. That's why when I replaced, so let me do it again. That's why with the blueprint selected, go to the outliner. When I replaced it with the BPTV, even though it's now a blueprint, it still kept the name. So if you do this method, you might want to come here and rename it to BP. So just show you different options. For the fastest way, just select the static mesh, come down to this icon, and then convert to blueprint class, click harvest, rename, and you're good to go. All the same thing. Good. So let's move forward with this. Okay, just thinking, should we set up the material first before we continue the blueprint? Okay, let us create the material. I'm going to do this in the movie folder. First things first, right click, go to media, and let's search for media player, asking if you want a video output. Yes. Okay, I'm going to call this, instead of new, I'm going to call this TV underscore media player. So once you do that, that creates a media texture for you, right? Save that. So that's step one. Before we continue, let us import the video we're going to use. Now you can use any video, right? I'm simply going to use the video animation for this project. So this is 31 MB. It should be as small as possible so that when you package the game, it doesn't considerably add to your project size. If you get a file that is 1 gig, when you compile it, that 1 gig is going to be added to your project file size. So I think I mentioned before a nice tool called Handbrake that you can use to compress your videos. So very nice tool and easy to use. So again, I'm going to use this video. Okay, it's just 1 minute. So the way to go about it is, first of all, I'm going to right click on movies. I'm going to open, where are you? Show in Explorer. So that opens it opens this folder where I have it in my project. I'm going to drag that video inside, right? Let's see, copy. I call mine TV just to make it simple and straightforward. And then I'm also going to drag and copy it into the project like this. That is the way it's done. Just take it from me. All right, I'm going to save. It's a bit finicky, but like I said, that's why I left this for last. Now I'm going to open the media player. You will see that the TV we just brought in, if I double click, that's it playing. The image media source was from, where are you? The one we created for the sequencer. That is why it is also showing up here. The more, if I bring in another, if I go to media, bring in another media player or another video or image source, they will all appear, here. So that's the, now I'm not using this because this is an image sequence, and this cannot be compiled, or when you are, what's the word now? When you are packaging your game, you can't package an image sequence, which is why we are using a video, right? And the video also comes with audio, which we want. So I'm going to close that, go back. So now we'll get to that later. Let me go back to movies. Okay, yeah, so we have a media player. Now with the media texture, what I want to do now is right click and create a material. So that will be TV media player material. Open this. We want to add this to the emissive color so that it's emitting some light. And I'm not sure if it's will be bright enough yet, but I'll just add a multiply node. Connect this here. Make this a parameter, call this intensity. Leave it at 1 for now. I think I also want to add specular and roughness to parameters. Roughness as well. Specular, and just leave them at the default value. We'll adjust the material later. Okay, and last but not least, as always, create a material instance. So that's the material that we're going to have on the TV when we start the game. Ignore what is going on here right now. Okay, so we made the material. Let's go back to our blueprints. Okay, you know what? Let's even just fix this now, just so that it doesn't look confusing. I'm going to go to our materials. And search for TV. So TV screen. So just a black material, good. So I'm going to rename this TV screen underscore off, and apply it here for now. I think that's fine. Also, for that to take effect here, you need to come here and apply instance changes to blueprint. So let's just leave it. Let's have it this way. I think it's less confusing. Okay, good. Let's go back to our blueprints. Now the same way we did for the door, whereby let me just run down what we want to do for this TV. The same process. We want to detect when the character is close to it, but this time we don't want the TV to just come on by itself when we are close to it. We want to press a button. So we get close to it, we're able to press a button, it comes on. Once we go far away from it, even if we press that same button, it won't go off or on until we go back close enough to it. So almost the same process like the door, but a few new nodes are going to learn. The same process, I'm going to add a box collision. Where are you? Let's do this in our viewport, or in our level rather. Click on box, adjust the size. This time I'm just going to drag it in front, doesn't need to be at the back. Adjust this as we see fit, but this is okay for now. Apply instance changes to blueprint, go back to our blueprint. Let's now, with the collision box selected, so I did this again. I added the collision when the TV was selected, because this is not going to move, right? It's not a big deal, but it's always best to do things properly. So they are not two separate meshes, they do not move each other. Okay, so with the box selected, I'm going to click on events begin overlap, again on end begin overlap. Okay, we'll do the exact same thing like we did for the door before we now add the other functionality. So let's just do that. Once the character overlaps, the TV comes on. Once it ends overlap, it goes off. Let's do that one first. Okay, so on character begin overlap, I want the TV to start playing, right? So to do that, we are going to let's see. Yes, again, what we want to play is this media player, but we need to have a reference to the media player here. And to do that, we need to create a variable. I'm going to click on plus variable. I'm going to call this media player. I'm going to change this from boolean to media player. Now, even though you just see these, how many is this? 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. These are the most commonly used variables, but there are a lot of variables, right? I'm just going to search for media player. The one I want is this one that just says media player, and I want an object reference. So with that, I would compile. Now in the details panel, I can then select the media player I want. Now they both say TV media player, so I need to go back and actually rename this. So I'm going to just call this TV because the other media player is for this image sequence. I'll just call this TV MP media player. I think that way you can differentiate the two of them. Now, so TVMP, good. Okay, so I'm going to drag out the media player. I want to get it because I want to now turn this on or make it play. One more thing I forgot to mention, in the media player itself, when you select the one we are using, ensure that loop, let me pause this, ensure that loop is enabled so that if the TV is on for as long as it is in your gameplay, once the video ends, it starts again from the beginning. Otherwise, once it ends, it will just freeze at the last frame or go back to black or something. So ensure that loop is enabled. And what you want to do now is once the character overlaps, you want to open source. Open source, search for TV media player, and once the character ends overlap, you want to close. Good. So I'm going to connect like this, and this will not work because the material that we have on the TV is the TV screen off. So how do we do that, or how do we fix that? Like I said, regardless of whatever material you have on your mesh, in your blueprint, you can set it. So what that means is to drag this forward, or you know what, let me just bring a reference to the TV. Now when the character overlaps, I want to set material, to the material instance, which is this one. So I can just have it selected and apply it here. And then when character ends overlap, connect like so. Always add a reference or the target and change the material to screen off. One more thing that is very important, the material itself is on element 2. So you want to ensure that your element is set to the right one, 2 and 2. Okay, let's give it another try. So approach comes on, video plays. Once it gets to the end, it loops, and once you escape, it closes. Open, close. Good. So that is step 1. Now the next step is we don't want it that when we don't want it to just open and come on and go off when we overlap the events. So I'm going to disconnect this. What we want is when we press a button, right, it comes on. When we press a button, it goes off. So let us do that first. Into right click, keyboard, and this time I'm going to use E. For all you gamers, E is typically what's used to interact. Some new games to make it F. I don't know why. Very weird. But E is the nearest thing to your movement keys, so that makes sense. And this time, I'm not going to use flip-flop, right? We're going to use it now, but you see where the flip-flop can give you issues. So let's, again, I can have just use the right node, but I want to show you why we are using the other node we're going to use eventually. So I'm going to search for flip-flop connect. Okay, so what this does is you click E, TV comes on, you click E, it goes off. So let's test this. I'm pressing E, but nothing is happening. Let's also double check that the flow is working well. So I'm pressing E. 1 second. Pressing E, it's not working. And the reason it's not working is because unlike the level blueprints, where keyboard input actions are noticed immediately or can be communicated with, a blueprint class is a bit different. An input won't just work automatically. So let's fix that. On event begin play, I'm going to search for enable inputs, and we want to connect the player controller. Remember I said earlier, the player controller is like the interface between the keyboard or your mouse, the mouse and keyboard, or your gamepad if you're using one, and the character itself. So it is very simple. I'll just right click and search for get player controller. Again, if all this seems like a lot, I mean, if you're new to blueprint, this is a lot, but this is just, again, the way it's done. Over time, it starts to make more sense. So let's compile and let's see what happens. Okay, so as I started the game, you see it shuts immediately. Now when I press E, the TV comes on. When I press E, it goes off. So we've enabled the keyboard controls. The problem now is the TV is coming on without us getting to the TV at all, right? Imagine you had 3 TVs or different blueprints that needed to use the keyboard E. Everything would just be haywire. It would choose which one it wants to communicate with and ignore the rest, or it might switch depending on different things. So to fix this, the logic is it is only when the character is close to the TV, or rather only when it overlaps the box, that the input is enabled, and when you end overlap, the input is disabled so that you cannot interact with the TV unless you are close to it. Hope that makes sense. So I'm simply going to disconnect this, bring this down here. So on component begin overlap, the input works, and then on component end overlap, you want to disable inputs. Ensure this goes to player controller, not target. The target is the TV blueprint itself. That's why it's named here self. So let's play. Let me maximize this. Now I press E, nothing happens. But the moment I overlap the box and I press E, TV comes on. Now I'm going to go back. I press E, it can't go off until I overlap again. So as long as I'm inside that box, I can turn it on and off. But once I go away, I can't. So that's the way it should be set up. Now the next step to make this more usable, because between me and you, we know what you're doing, but if you are giving this to someone, they would not know that, okay, they are meant to, they may not even know that the TV is interactable. So we want to have something that will indicate to us once we approach that we can press E to put on the TV. And we can do that. Let's go to our viewport. we can do that with the text component. So I'll click on add, type text render. It will appear like so. I'm going to rotate it till it's in front of the TV, just ever so slightly. Now in the details panel, I'm going to change the alignment from left to center, so it's in the center, and the text itself, maybe first of all make it slightly smaller. Now depending on your audience, once someone says E, they might not need to press E. You might want to actually spell it out, press E, right? So anyone that works for you, I'll leave it as at press E. Okay, good. Now you want this to be visible when we approach the collision, right? Before then you want it to be invisible. So in the details panel, I'm going to make it invisible, right? That's the default state. Let's then go back to our event graph. We have our text render. This time I didn't make the mistake, even though I wasn't conscious about it. So drag in the text render, bring it up here. So on event begin overlap, we are enabling input and you want the text to be visible. So I'm going to drag out text, sorry, not text, just type visible, set visibility, what we are looking for. So once we overlap, we want it to be visible. I'll duplicate, and once we end overlap, we want this to be invisible. So that is a good indicator to anyone playing. So if we approach, press E, we escape, or if we go away. So now whoever approaches here will know to press E to put it on. Again, we are doing this step by step so that you see the thought process. Now we've pressed E, you won't want this text to still be there once you press E, right? Once you put it on. So again, either duplicate or just make a copy, bring it down to make a reference. The moment we press E the first time and goes through A, we want to set this again to be invisible. So I will just duplicate this and connect like so and make it invisible. Perfect. So press E and now it is invisible. Now, another thing about when you're making blueprints is always test. Always try to break it. Always try to see, if what you have done can be improved or if there are any errors or issues with it. Now, all this looks nice until you move away, right, and come back. Now, while the TV is on, you don't want the text to be showing, right? I think we can all agree on that. You don't want that text to be showing until you turn it off, and even then, it will not show until you go back and come back to it. So how do we do that? The way we've set this up now is I click once, it comes on, this disappears, but if I move back the TV again, the text still comes back, and this is where the flip-flop falls apart, because this only does two things: left or right, 1 or 0, up and down. It cannot check if it cannot check the state of anything to know if it should do something, right? And that is where I'm going to replace this with a branch node and a boolean node. So I think it's best to see it in action. I'm going to create a branch node, B for branch. I just held B on my keyboard and click, that's a shortcut. Some of these nodes have shortcuts, or you can just right click and type branch. Same thing. Okay, so it almost looks the same as the flip. If I let me bring back the flip flop. So you plug it in here, you click, it goes A, B, A, B, A, B, right? This time, right, connect to the branch and connect to true and false. What this is asking is, it's asking for a condition. Is something happening? If the answer is true, it will play this. Is it not happening? The answer is false, it will play this. Right now, by default is ticked. So whatever I do is always going to go through the true value, right? So just to test this, press E, it comes on. If I press E again, it's always going to keep on coming on, right? It's not going to go up because this is set to true. Now we need to also make a condition, which is a boolean. As you can see, it's red, and that condition is asking a question: is the TV, in our case, it's going to be, is the TV on, right? I like to start from the negative. We can also ask, is the TV off, right? And we can wire it the way we want, but you see why we have to start with the default state of things, right? Because by default the TV is off when we start the game. So I'm going to create a variable, and the reason why it's showing media player is because it will always show the last thing you made. So I'll just simply change this back to boolean, and I'll rename this to b shortcut for boolean is TV on. Okay, compile. By default the TV is off, so I'm going to leave it unchecked. Right, it's not on, so I'll leave it unchecked. I'm going to drag this into the condition. So we are, every time we click E now, we're asking a question. If I click E, we're asking, is the TV on? That's the condition. Right now, okay, well, okay. Is the TV on? The answer is false. The TV is not on. So we're just going to do a quick rewiring. Again, we could have started out with is TV or off, so that it will be true. Oh, I don't know, somewhere in my brain it just seems to confuse me, right? So by the time we go through this, you know what works for you. So let's again start with this. The important thing is to understand what you are doing, right? Whether whichever one we use, we'll still get the same results as long as you wire it the right way. So let's start with this. Is the TV on? The answer is false because it's not, by default it's not on. So I'm going to drag this here because we want this to then come on. I'm going to plug the other one here. So we just essentially, I could have moved all this up, right, so that we don't have to, if I, you know what, let's just do that now, so that way it's not confusing anybody. Okay, so hope this makes more sense. So again, is the TV on? Answer is no. So there we change the material to the TV material, we open the media player, and we set the texture visibility to not, right? Now at this point the TV is on, but Unreal Engine doesn't know that. We need to set it. So what I'm going to do is, with all variables, right, you have two modes. If I drag it in, we either have get, which is what I did for this place, or we can drag it in again and we say set. So I'm going to drag this set here, and this time I'm telling Unreal Engine that the TV is now on. So let's go through it. Let's go through it again. I press E. We're asking the question: is the TV on? The answer is no, because by default it's not on. So the answer is false. So we put it on, and we need to tell Unreal Engine that the TV is on. So that's how we set it like this. Next time I press E, it's going to ask again, is the TV on? Because we've told it that it is on, that's true. It's then going to change the material, close the media player, and the same thing again. We're going to set this to off, right? Going to compile and save. With this, we've essentially done what we're doing with the flip-flop. So let's confirm that it works. Press E, press E. If I go away, it's not coming on, and to get close, press E. But now that we fixed that, let us now fix this issue of the text showing up when the TV is still on. Okay, and that is why this branch node was important and this boolean was important. Now when you approach, we want to ask again, is the TV on? If the TV is on, we won't set the visibility. So let's see it in action. Regardless of whether it's on or off, we always want to enable and disable input, right? Once we begin and end overlap. Now I'm going to bring in another branch. I'm going to ask the same question. So if the TV is on, right, meaning if it's on, I sometimes you have to just really focus. So if the TV is on, meaning true, you want the visibility to be off, meaning once you approach, it's not going to come on. But if the TV is not on, then you want that text to show. I hope it makes sense. If it doesn't, again, go through this class again. It will, I promise you. So let's try this now. In fact, I think also best we see it in action. I'm going to zoom out a bit. Okay. So I approach the TV. The event beginning overlap will fire, and you can see that it goes through. It asks a question: is the TV on? Because it's not on, it shows the text. Now I put on the TV and I move away. And the next time I approach, it's going to ask, is the TV on? Because it is true, it will ensure that the text does not come back on. So it's still set to visibility, right? So until I turn it off, if I go away and come back, the text now comes on. So I hope that helped to, you know, demystify that. That is one thing that the flip-flop cannot do for you. It cannot check conditions of things. Unlike the level blueprint where all we want is press 1, it changes from day to night, press 2, it toggles the mood light on and off. There's no interdependency, so a flip-flop can work. We could still have used branch for that, just to double, triple make sure nothing happens, but flip-flop can work for anything that doesn't require you to check something. The moment you need to check if something is happening somewhere else that is dependent on that flip-flop node or that sequence, then you need to use a branch node, and you always need to ask a question, right? If we change this to is the TV off, then we would have just reversed everything, just reversed the condition. So that's why I don't know the way people's brain works. It depends on whenever I try is TV off, it throws me off. I need to really focus 100%. So that's why I like to use the default states, or rather, I like to use is TV on. So either one would work. And we're almost done with the TV. The very last thing now is we don't have any sound. We need to hear what we are watching. And that is pretty simple. We're back in our blueprints. I'm going to add a sound, set of media sound. So add media sound to appear in the center. And in the details panel, we're going to scroll all the way down to media player and select the TV underscore MP. Now this is stage 1 or part 1, but let's see what happens. Okay, I don't know if you can hear it, but TV, the sound is playing. The issue you find out is the sound, the volume is consistent. The sound is consistent no matter where you are in your level, and that is not realistic. So let us fix that. First thing we want to do is on the media sound, we want to enable something called two things: allow specialization and override attenuation. Once you do that, you see you have two big spheres, which is controlled by the attenuation volume. So the smaller sphere is where the audio will be loudest, and the bigger sphere, it will start to taper down as you move away from it. It will start tapering down until you get to this end. So once you are beyond the sphere, you won't hear anything again. So let's go to our level and fix that. As you can see, spheres are way too big for what we want. So with the media sound selected, inner radius, I'm just going to make it 10. So it's very small. You know what? Let me make it as big as the TV. So 50 should be fine. And for the follow distance, let's see 500. I'm going to go to top plan, F2, Alt and F2 for wireframe. I'm just going to make this as big as the scene. What's important is that it covers just where the scene is. So let's say 1,000. That's fine. Go back to Alt and G to go back to perspective. Now let's try this again. As I move away, the volume reduces, right? And as you rotate your camera, if you're using your headphones, you have this sense of the audio is coming from right now, the right side of my ear, right? That's what the specialization does. What's the word? It gives that sound of a 3D presence, right? If I rotate and move to this side, I'm hearing the audio from my left ear, which is the way it's meant to be, right? And if I face it, I'm hearing it properly on both ears. And I have to this loud. So I'm going to turn this off. A few more controls. Let's go back to our event graph. Um, where are you? Okay. So you can decide to adjust the volume of the, is this the right node? Let me check. So let me open this. Right, I set to 0. Let me see. No, that's not it. How do you adjust the volume? Media sound. Okay, actually, so you bring in a media sound and then, yeah, adjust volume. Let me see. Set volume multiplier. Again, I'm not sure which one it is, so let's test. So this shouldn't give us any audio. Did I disconnect something? Let's see. Okay, so why is the TV not playing? Is it this node that brought in? Let me move this away, compile, play. Okay, that's interesting. So this is not it. Let's try the volume multiplier. This should be it. Again, if it's the right one, video should play and we shouldn't hear anything. Perfect. So if the volume is too loud, which in my case, I just want to bring it down by half, so 0.5. Let's see if that's better. Yeah, this is okay. And the further I go, I'm not sure if I put a collision here, so let's find out. Hahaha, I did not. So this is why it's always good to test your project as much as possible. There's no collision on this back wall here, so I'm quickly going to do that. Collision, add a box collision, save. We are able to go into this narrow path because we've made our character very narrow. So I mean, to avoid that, if you don't want to, you can just make your character slightly bigger, or the collision for maybe this mesh, you just make it bigger so that the character doesn't go through. But yeah, always stress test your project as much as possible, because once you package it, there's an error, that's not a good thing. So let's check out our TV one more time. Press E, it's playing. Change from day to night, open mode lights, and turn it off. And with that, we are done with our blueprints. I really hope this was eye-opening. I hope you've learned something. I'm sure you've learned something, but the goal now is for you to practice and let this become second nature and begin to build on this, because believe me, there is a whole lot more that can be done with blueprints. I'm still learning. It's a never-ending process. We learn every day. I think, and that's the most important thing, right? Don't get too comfortable with what you know. As soon as you master something, always try and learn more. The more you know, so with blueprints, you're only limited by what you know, to be honest. Not so much by your creativity, but by the tool itself. It's good to be creative, don't get me wrong, but and that will only fuel your wanting to know things based on what you want to create, right? But again, it's like a language. The more you know, the more complex your blueprints can be. The more of a language the more big grammar, you can put out there. So that's the same principle. But yes, I think this is good enough to use for almost any project. Can change the date, can change the lighting, can open doors, put on TV. This same approach for the TV, for example, can be used for the lamp, right? Simple thing to do is convert this to a blueprint, add a light source, right? Let me just open this. You can add a light. Let me just search for lights. Yeah, point lights, spotlights, you can add them. So at the beginning, you will set the visibility to 0 or set the intensity to 0. And then when you approach, if you don't want the light to come on automatically, you can do this exact same process. Have the text, when you approach, the text shows up. It says press E or just E. When the person presses E, the light comes on. So it's the same process that you can use for a lot of other blueprints, right? So I'll leave that to you as your challenge. You can also apply that to the door as well that we've just done. Instead of the door just opening and closing when you approach it, let it be that when you approach, it enables input and then you press E to open, right? I'll just show you one more thing, not because it's anything special, but I prefer to use my left mouse button to interact, right? So I think okay, there's no time to just show you one more thing. But after this now, I'm going to show you how to package the project so that it will be a standalone file, and then best practices for when you are done with your project. So let me just show you one quick thing. Just looking for an image on my computer that I'm going to use. Okay, perfect, I found it. Okay, let's make this a little bit more interesting, right? Instead of the E key, I'm going to change this to the left mouse button. So I'll simply just select this, make sure it's yellow, orange, and any button I click will be the active button. So if I left click, changes to left mouse button, right? So when I play, instead of pressing E now, I just click, and I think that's just nicer. I like that feel as against pressing the button. Some people may have to look down and look at the E button to know where it is, but left clicking is straightforward. But then what do we do about the text? That's where we can use something else. So I'm going to go back to textures. I'll create a folder for UI. I'm simply dragging in a mouse texture that I made in Photoshop or Affinity. So it's a PNG file, right? So this, again, hoping that your audience is tech savvy. I think anyone that sees it should know that you are being asked to left click, right? It has to be obvious. So once you open the image, what you want to do is just you want to change this from the texture group from world to UI. Every other texture that we are using won't need to this will need to be changed because it's going to be like a UI element. Well, to be honest, actually, when I say UI, it's like things on your screen. No, so this is not on your screen actually. So I'm going to leave this as well. This is actually going to be in your world. So yeah, leave that. So this is a PNG because we don't want the background. We don't want the background to show just the mouse. So to bring it into our blueprint, what we're going to use is called a billboard. Again, ensure that nothing is selected. Now, what a billboard does for you, I think the best way just to show it in action. Because right now, a billboard by default it has like dragon image, and I think it's best I bring this out a bit so that you see what it's doing. A billboard always faces the camera regardless of where you're looking. So wherever I look, the billboard will always rotate to face the camera, even if I move to the top view. But so that's one good thing about the billboard. Now I'm going to replace this with the mouse texture. Just click here, and that's the mouse. So wherever I move, where it's going to face. Obviously the size is too big. Just going to use this scale, bring it down, so 0.005. To affect all three, ensure your padlock is locked down. And I'm going to move this back, maybe up here a bit, forward a little bit. Maybe that's too small. By the time we play, we'll find out. 0.006. Okay. Now in the event graph, I'm simply going to remove the text and use the billboard. So as simple as that. Delete the text. I think I need the billboard here as well. Well, hope my audio has been loud enough. I did not realize this was way down. Apologies if it's not too loud. Okay, what next? I'm going to delete the text render. And last but not least, the billboard, I'm going to ensure that at the beginning, it is not visible. Cool. Let's test this out. Okay, so it's not showing up. Let us see. Something I've done wrong. Billboard, set visibility, not. Let's go back to the viewport. Okay, let me set the billboard back to being visible. Okay, so let's test again. Let me just see if it shows up in the, so it doesn't. What am I missing? Let me reset the scale. Let's go back to our events. Billboard. Okay, so hidden in game was enabled. So I'm going to undo everything back to what it was. So these are, troubleshooting. Once something doesn't work, these are the things to look at before you panic or, scatter things. Just try to look at the default settings first, right? Look around, see what could be the issue. So I'm going to remove hidden in game and ensure it's invisible at the beginning. So let's try this again. Play, I approach, and now it shows up. And no matter where I look, okay, now I forgot to move it back close to the TV. So I know it's there. I'm just going to eyeball it. That should be enough. So I think this is nicer than, a text. Makes your project look more refined. So left click comes on, left click to turn off. And when I go back and go forward, pops up again. So cool. I think with this, we are good to go with the blueprint. And the last thing we want to do for this scene is to package our project. All right, and it's pretty straightforward. To do that, you need to go to platforms. Actually, before we do that, let's go to edit project settings. We need to set up something. Now let's go to our maps and modes. In the very first class, I think we came here and we talked about your editor startup map, where I said it would be good to just use an empty level, so that if in the future you need to migrate something from this project, you don't have to enter the main project before you can migrate. Once you open this empty level, you still have your content browser available for you to migrate whatever you want. This is a very small project, so it doesn't take too much time to open. But if this were a very large project, you don't want to spend time opening the project just to migrate something. But what is important here is the game default map. Right now, it's using another level, which is the blank empty level, meaning if we package this game now, this is going to be the start level, and all our beautiful work we've done won't show up. So we want to change this to the apartment level. That's the persistent level we are using. So that is the only change I want to make here. And maybe one more thing. Remember as well, in our world settings, we changed the game mode override to first person game mode. Say for whatever reason, so let's say for example, if you're making a much larger game, let's say for example, you get to this door, you press a button, it takes you to another room. Let's say for whatever reason you don't want to have the two rooms in one level. Let's say that second room is in another level. You will then need to come to that level will need to have its own, you need to override and do the exact same process. But if you go to project settings and do it here in the maps and modes, first person game mode, right? That means that any level you make, let me see, even though this is set to none, any level you make now, if I press play, we are using the first person, right? Because we've set it up here. If I change this back to none, or let me see, was that set to none before? Then yeah, we are flying around. So this is like the master controller. If you set it up here, if you create 100 levels in this project, it will always do that first person. Where this now comes in handy is if in a second level in this project you want to use another kind of controller, right? But for now, it doesn't hurt to have both of them on, it's doing the same thing. So that's all we need to set up in the project settings. And to package our project, we need to go to platforms. Okay, before we package, to demonstrate why I said we need to create this in the movie folder, I forgot to show you. Let's see. So I opened the media player or media source, and the file path you see is .movies and then the TV. If this was not the movies, there was going to be an error here, and I'll demonstrate that by going to TV folder for our sequence. I'm going to open this, and you see sequence path is telling you that there's an issue because this is an image sequence, and we're not using this for the package. It doesn't matter. So that's why it's very important that you create everything, or the media source in the movie folder. And it just makes sense to have everything in that movie folder, so everything is in one place. Okay, finally, let's package. So platform, let it hang. It's hanging. Okay, so platform packaging settings, right? Let's go there. That will also take you to your project settings packaging. We're on maps and most. We could as well have just clicked on packaging. There's nothing we need to do here per se. What you want to ensure that is ticked is this button one, include prerequisite installer. So this ensures that anyone that wants, if you decide to give this to anyone to run it, they might need some pre-installed things for it to run properly. So this will ensure that those things are installed on the person system when they run. It's nothing like just a few kilobytes or megabytes, nothing too heavy or anything, just to ensure that this thing runs on whoever system you give it to. Okay, so back to platforms, we want to go to package project. You will see that Android, iOS, Linux, Mac, they're all having that triangle warning. That's because when we installed Unreal Engine, we did not install these modules for them. If let's say you're making something for Android, then you need to go back and install the Android module, and that will not have this warning. But for now, we are only working with Windows, so package project, Windows, ensure it's on project default. We want to use the project setting development by default, and that is the default value. This is good for testing when you're testing your project. When you are completely done and you are ready to ship it out, then you use shipping. So for now, let's use project development. Another thing about packaging is it is very important to package as often as possible. The very first time you package your project, whether it's new, whether it's brand new or you've worked on it for a while, it might take a while. How long? To be honest, it's not something that I can really predict. I've done first builds that took 5 minutes. I've done builds that took 20 minutes, right? But after that first time, as you begin to work on your project and you keep on packaging to ensure that everything is working properly, that time will significantly reduce, right? One reason why it's good to package often is because so far we've not imported anything that is not native to Unreal Engine, maybe except for the tree, which is still a Megascan asset. As your journey, as you go along your journey, you would start to buy assets, import things that are not native to Unreal Engine, and sometimes those assets might have some issues that you will not be aware of until time to package, and at that point it will be a pain to start to debug or sort out the issue. Thankfully, we have AI now, which makes that process much easier. So I'll show you, what to do in case of a build fail. I don't think it's going to fail for this, and I think I've packaged. I have a copy of it which I've packaged, and that took 5 minutes the first time. So hope it doesn't take that long for this, but let us see. So again, Windows project default. We're using the first default settings, and I'm going to click on package projects. I'll put mine on the desktop. No need to make a new folder. To make a folder by itself, so I'll just select, and it's doing that for us. Packaging project for Windows. Now, if you want to see what is going on, you can click on the show output log, and this will give you a log of what is going on. Now, this log also shows a lot of things that we have been doing since before we started packaging. So it's not like this is the entire process, but if you scroll down, you see it's adding more lines. It's packaging is doing stuff. So let us give this a couple minutes. If it takes, because I'm trying to think if there's anything I can show you. Well, because typically while it's packaging, you don't want to be working on the project, right? That can mess up things, and yeah, so we'll just leave it. But yeah, as it's going along, you might see some yellow lines, meaning yeah, potential errors, but nothing that will prevent the game from being packaged. But if the package should fail, or before it fails, you see a lot of these lines would start turning to red. And that is where you can get your cues from. If you get a package fail, my advice is, so before AI in the past, right? Because debugging is not my biggest strength. What I would typically do is copy that code. It could be multiple lines. So you copy it, right? You read through, look for the part that says failed, maybe copy a few lines above and below, paste that into Google. Because I can assure you a lot, there's almost no issue you've had that someone has not had before. Paste that into Google. Most likely, if it's a common issue, it will bring up like forums, Unreal Engine forums where people have had that same issue, and you can read through, and that's how, oh, perfect, so it packaged. That's, well, I had no doubts. That is how I used to solve those issues before. But now with AI, you can typically just select as much, well, not too much, right? Unless if you're using Claude or ChatGPT, unless it asks for more context, copy it, right? Tell it you were building, you had an error. It's always good to tell it what version of Unreal Engine you are using, because I think that really helps. And it has never failed me, right? It always knows where to point where the issue is, right? So AI, very nice for things like that. So with the game being packaged, I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to go to my desktop. This is the Windows, and we have this. Now let's right click and see. Let's check out the size. 1.6 gig. Not bad. To run it, simply double click on the UE apartment. Take a few seconds to load. Ah, perfect. So I'm actually happy this happened, right? Let me try and run it again. Okay, good. So this has happened before, and from experience, I know why. So I'm going to bring back, for some reason, there's something wrong with the tree that is preventing Unreal Engine from, it packaged right, but nice, it's not, refusing to run. So it's not like this won't work. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to package this again. Platforms, package content. Now I'm going to go to shipping, and This time I'm going to package again. Let me go back to desktop. Let me call this Windows Dev Development. Okay, so platforms, package project is on shipping now, package, desktop. So, I mean, this won't take that much time based on what we did before. So let me show you another way to debug. You want to open the folder. This is what we've packaged. You want to go to UE apartments, saved, logs. Now, when this happened, these two logs, I copied it into ChatGPT and told it my game packaged, but it refused to run, or rather, it showed a black screen and went off. And when it went through it, it found out that there was something, for whatever reason, there was something wrong with this tree that was preventing it from booting up when I packaged with the development mode. But with the shipping mode, which is this one, it should work. Fingers crossed. Perfect. So it works. So again, these are just some of the things you have to just prepare for, right? And like I said, AI really does a good job of pointing you in the right direction, right? Again, forums are still very good to help out with very common issues. So yeah, our game is done. Press 1, toggle from day to night. Can put on my mood lights. Approach the door, it opens. Put on the TV. Good. I think that is basically it. Aha. One more thing. I knew I was getting something. Now to close this blueprint, typically you would want to press your escape button, but that doesn't work because we did not code it into our blueprint. The only way for me to close this now is I have to press the Windows button and manually right click on the icon and close window, right? Okay, so I won't package it again, but to do that, simply you can do this in your level blueprint. So let's go to our level blueprint. Going to duplicate this. Click on the keyboard icon and just click on escape. Drag out and search for quit game, and it's as simple as that. So next time when you package and you want to quit your game, just press escape. Good. And I believe this brings us to the end of this class or this module, this session. I'm really happy with the final results. I hope you learned a lot. I know you learned a lot, but I hope this will help you start your Unreal Engine journey, because believe me, there's so much more that can be done. And to that effect, I want to show you. So I've taken this project, I've gone a bit further, and let me show you some of the things I've been able to do. So as you can see, I've added a UI interface where before you just jump into the project, you can actually start instructions for you to see, and then you can start the game. Some of the new features I've added for this one is if I right click, I'm able to zoom, and you will see that it has this auto focus effect. So right now the chair is in focus while the chessboard is not. To make it more prominent, let me use this wall. So if I zoom into this panel, you can see that this area is in focus, the other side is not. If I move the mouse, you can see it changes focus. So this is a nice feature, really makes the project feel alive. What else can we do? So I made the lamp a blueprint. So the same way you approach, the mouse pops, you click, it comes on, get close, goes off. So have the TV, same process. And then for the door, did the same thing. You approach, this time you click to open, and then you click to close. What else did I do? Very nice one is the minimap. So I pressed M to bring out the minimap, and this shows you your location in the project. This is very good for when you have a very large project and whoever is experiencing this, they want to have an idea of what they are looking at. So having a minimap is a very nice feature to have. Another one was in the project we just finished, right? We have one to toggle from day to night, but this time I decided to use one for day, two for night, and then three will toggle the mode lights on and off. So just a different configuration. That can also be done with another widget or interface. So I can click and change from day to night and put on the mode lights. And one of my favorite ones is the ability to change materials. So you can click on the floor, change the materials. This way you can have several options in one project. You can click on the wall. If I want brick or plaster, armchair, change the material. Let's go to the kitchen area. Upper cabinets, can make it white. Lower cabinets, now give it the wood finish or make it black. Can also adjust the countertop. Splashback. So you can see you can really get a lot of configurations. So this is just some of the many things that can be done with Blueprint. This is going to be available on my Gumroad this week. It's not going to be paid, but this at least can give an idea of how to reverse engineer some of these blueprints. To be honest, some of them might be a bit technical, but as you start your real engine journey, if you come back to this, some things start to make more and more sense. So I'll put a link to the files sometime this week in all the video descriptions for this session. So if you're interested, you can check it out. Let me exit. And last but not least, I also want to show you, where is it? Where are you? So every few weeks, I run a live class for Unreal Engine where, I teach all these things live, and a new one is coming up in September. I just want to show you what we'll be working on for the class. Okay, so let me open the file. Again, the link for that is in the description. You can check it out. I'll just give you a preview into what it looks like. It's taking a while to open because I believe for this project, I set it to open. Did I? Let me see. Once it opens, I'll find out. Okay, yeah, so it opens into an empty scene. Well, like I said, the heavier your projects or the bigger they come, the longer they take to open. But imagine if I set it to open to the actual level, it would have taken much longer. And like I said, if I needed to just migrate something, which reminds me, I've not shown you guys how to migrate your assets. So I've not even shown you best practices. All right, that's fine. So it's good that and let that be the last thing we actually cover, which is fine. I'm going to open the maps folder. Okay. Excellent. Let me just adjust the time. So for this project, actually used the BP Sun, right? This is the entire project, quite massive. So it's not just a small room. And then we have a lot of, interior spaces, the kitchen, dining. At the back, we have the pool. It's a bit bright. Where's the post process volume? Yeah, I was making some adjustments. So yeah, much better. Yeah, so we're going to cover again how to go through this from scratch, from max. Going to import all of this. Then going to work properly with vegetation, how to add animations to the trees, how to work on the very large scale project, because a lot of times when you have proper job, you're going to be much bigger than just one room. And it'll be good to know how to optimize and how to manage such projects. Okay, to go deeper into materials, some things that we did not cover because of time. And then, yeah, let me just do a quick demo. So this is what it looks like. We'll go into UI widgets. Here I can adjust the time of day. I can adjust the offset. And the way we set up the blueprint is by 7:30 or so, at a specific time, all the lights come on, and then the moonlight also comes out. Where's the moon? Yeah. So very nice. And then, you know, so yeah, if this looks interesting to you, check out the description if you want to learn how to do this. And we're going to be going a lot more deeper into everything we've covered in this session, in this series, but much more deeper. So check out the description, follow the link, and can check it out. Cool. Let's actually go back to our project. Okay. Now, when you're done with your project, right, there are different, in fact, did I even need to open it? Yeah, we're going to migrate. There are different things you want to do to, round up. You are done. Want to padlock. Even if you come back to it later, the first thing of which is oil engine projects can get very heavy. Now, if I right click on this and check the properties, it's a small project, so 7.7 gig, not too bad. But I will show you things here that you can delete that are not important, right? Let's Unreal Engine open because I want to close it again. Okay, so need to close. So the first thing, like I said, this size right now is what? 7.7, almost 8 gig. Saved, intermediate, derived cache, build, and binaries are not, I won't say they're not important, but this can be deleted. The most important folders in your project directory is the config and the content. Now, what these three, especially these three, what they do for you is, if you've noticed on your own projects, the more you open it, the more you work on it, the faster it opens in a sense, right? It opens fast. Let me put it that way. And remember that we made some customizations whereby, for example, in the content folders, we right-clicked and changed the colors of some folders, right? So you lose that customization if you delete these folders. Any other one in your project setting stays, this doesn't affect that. So these 5 folders can go. If I right click and check the size, 4 gig. So your actual project size is just 3.8 and that 4 gig, right? So what you should notice is that the moment you delete this, once you open Unreal Engine again, these folders will come back, but they will never be at that size. It is the more you work on the project, the more that those files will start to keep on growing. So typically, when I'm done with a project, or I know I'm almost done, or I know I don't need to, I'm not really bothered. I don't care about those folder colors. I just delete them. And to prove my point, I'll delete it and then open the project again, because then I want to show you. As you can see now, it already made those two folders, intermediate and save. The more you work on the project, those other folders that were gone will come back. So in fact, we have a derived data cache already. But obviously right now it's going to be in kilobytes. Yeah, 5 MB. So the longer you work on it, the size will increase over time. So just take note of that. That's one. The second thing is I want to show you also how to migrate your project, right? First thing is to migrate your project. If you want to migrate an asset from one project to another, and the second reason is also to reduce your project size. So let me explain. I'm going to open the level apartment. Okay. Let me go to the mega plants. Now you will see that when we brought in the mega plants, right, it brought in all these materials, instances, textures, and the different trees. Now we are only using one tree out of the four, right? So we can manually start to delete some of these assets. But if you have a very big project and you know that some things are not being used, the best way to fix it is to migrate the entire project. That will migrate only what is important for that project, and then you can then use that as the base of the project you are working on. So I said a lot there. Let me explain. But for this to work, you need to create a new empty project. So I'm going to open my Epic Games. Launch 5.81 should be the same engine version that you're using. Okay, new project, architecture. I'll leave it on the desktop. I'll leave the name to my project. So create. Now, even though it's opening, I can start doing what I want to do, because if I go to my desktop, it's already showing my project and the folders are already there. So I don't need to. Okay, it's open, but that's fine. So I'm going to minimize the new project. Let us first of all migrate something. Let's say we want to migrate the master material, right? Select the material folder, go to master. Let's say I only want to migrate this one. Right click, asset actions, migrate. Now, what it's doing is opening a window for you and telling you that these textures and the functions are dependent. They all come together with the master material, because if I open it, all the textures that were used inside here and the functions all come together to make this master material. So ideally you would want everything to be ticked, but for whatever reason, if you don't, you can untick some parameters, but I want everything to go. So I'll say okay. I'll go to the desktop where I have the new project, and this is where it's very important. You are migrating from content folder to content folder. You can't migrate anywhere else. To test this, if I just click here, it tells me select a content folder. So that won't work. So I need to be inside the content folder, select folder, and it migrates it. Now, if I go to the new project, go to the content browser, it also carries the folder structures of what you had in your previous, in the other project. So I go to materials, we have the function, we have the master, and we have the textures that came with it. Simple. Okay, I'm going to, let's migrate this TV blueprint, or let's say this door, right? Control B to go to where it is. Or in fact, let's migrate two of them. I will right click, asset actions, migrate. Now it's going to carry all the static meshes, all the materials, the TV, everything that is connected to this blueprint will all be attached, and we'll just say okay. It will remember the last content folder you selected and select folder. Now it is telling me that it wants to override the master material because again the master material is connected to this. So I can say if, let's say, for whatever reason I'd already made changes to that master material, I would say no. But because I haven't made any change, I'll just say yes to all and to override that. Now when I go back to the new project, I go to my blueprints, I have the door. It is calculating the mesh. Don't be afraid. The door is going to pop out. Once this is done, voila. And then the TV, right? So this is how you can, when you make one blueprint, you don't have to make it again for every project. You can start to. So what I do is I have a blueprint project where I migrate all my blueprints to. So in the future, if I need something, I just migrate into the project I'm working on. That way, if I learn something new, I can always go back to my original blueprint and improve on it as against having to make a new blueprint every single time you have a project. So I have a separate project for materials where I put on my master materials, and anything I want to test with materials, I have one for blueprints. You can have one file for everything, but I think it's just nicer to have separate files to store and save separate things, right? So that is the way I do mine. So I've migrated. So basically, you can migrate anything. That's the basic process. Now, the last thing I want to do is to migrate the entire level, and you see why I'm doing that. Um, for that, I just simply need to go to levels, right-click the apartment level, asset actions, migrate. Now it's going to migrate everything that is connected to this level, which are all the things that are required for this level to work. Okay, the same folder. Now it's going to override because we've already migrated some things, which is fine. So yes to all. So you soon see why I'm migrating the entire level. This is another way we can just use to make our project file smaller, especially when I only do this one when I am completely done with the project, or at least I'm 100% sure that if I need to bring in anything new, it will not be, so much, right? If it's a client project, obviously deliver the project first before you do any of this. This might take a while, shouldn't take too long. Let this finish, and you see the importance of this action. I'm suspecting. Okay, that's interesting. Didn't think it would take this long, but it should speed up hopefully eventually. Okay, actually, so that's fine. While this is going on, let me show you one more thing. So you know how I've shown you how to delete um, your saved intermediate derived data cache. There's another set of folders hiding somewhere in your C drive that can be very annoying. I remember when I started using Unreal Engine the first time, my laptop then wasn't so strong, and the C drive was, I think, 1 terabyte or less. I realized that after a period of time, my C drive was turning red because it was already full of other things, and I was wondering what was going on. Thankfully, I found the solution in Josh. I'm so sorry. Thank you for joining that. I don't know when you joined the class, but yes, Unreal Engine is actually very intuitive. You just have to once you get through knowing the basics, then yes, it is. You're only limited by, your creativity, and in terms of how much you know about blueprints. There's almost nothing that, I mean, people solo devs make complete games with Unreal Engine, right? So that's how it's a game engine for crying out loud. So that's how powerful it is. So sorry for I didn't see when you put this into the chat. Thanks for joining. Okay, so where was I? Um, yes. So the second folder we want to check is for this to work, we need to show hidden items. So I'm going to go to my C drive. I'm going to go to users. Going to go to my PC name, app data. Where are you? Local. Now, if you scroll down, we're going to see two Unreal Engine folders. You want the second one. Now, ignore all of this. I have all this because I've installed this previous version before. you might just have 5.8, or some other versions might appear, but they're not that important. What you're looking for is this common folder, and we're looking for this derived data cache. This is the same folder we had in our project. Now I'm going to right click on this and check the properties. 4.4 gig. Now, granted, I come here quite often and delete this folder when it gets large. When I first had this issue, when I did not know about this, the day I found this folder, it was about 200 gig. So again, this folder grows over time the more you use Unreal Engine. So the best thing is, after you're done with a major project, or the only downside to this is whenever you start your project for the very first time, it takes much longer. But after that, because once you create it, this folder will come back. But then, like I said, your project will open faster. Over time, you come back here, delete it. So it's 4.1. I'm not going to bother. But those are the two areas that you can check to to relieve your drives of space if you need to. Typically, I leave it there until it's about 50 gig, and I just wipe off everything. So yes, it's done migrating. Let's now go back to project, and everything that we need in this project is in the contents browser, and it's all here. The levels are here, but that is not the reason I migrated for the sake of this project. Let's now check out something. I'm going to put these two side by side. You see what I mean? Okay. Desktop, my project. So this is the new project. I'm going to go to documents. Let me unhide documents, apartment, Unreal Engine. So these are the two. This is the new project. This is the one we've been working on. And I'm going to right click content, check properties, 2.18. Going to right click content, check properties, 3.85. So there's over 1 gig of files in here that are not needed for this project to run. So which is why once I'm done with the project, I always migrate the main level, migrate that will take everything that level needs into a new folder, into a new project, completely empty. And when I'm done, I simply delete this content folder and bring this one in. But there's a catch. So let's open two of them. The one the first time I did this, or when I learned about this, and I did not care to, I assumed all the files, followed along until I made a terrible mistake, and I even deleted the previous folder before I found the error. For whatever reason, and I don't know why, and I don't think it's a bug, it's just the way Unreal Engine is. The sequencer folder does not carry over when you migrate. So if you've done a lot of work in your sequencer, you've created renders, you've created cameras, you've done your animations, and you migrate, and you do not copy this over here. Let me not move. I want to copy. If you don't copy this over here, then you are losing everything. John, thanks for joining. You are wondering if Unreal Engine is easy to learn. It is. There's nothing. I mean, once a software or anything is demystified, right? I would say it's easy to learn. This is the last series of the last class of this series. So if you go back and start from the first one, this is the fifth class. You start from the first, you'll be able to achieve, all of this. I've gone through the entire steps from beginning of exporting from 3ds Max, importing, working on materials, lighting. So we covered everything. So I believe by the time you go through this, it will give you a very good foundation to, keep on learning. So yeah, when I started my journey, there wasn't any of this. I had to painfully go through a lot of YouTube videos. I mean, which is what you are doing, right? But then ArchViz wasn't that. This was 2016. People were using Unreal Engine for ArchViz, but it wasn't as big as it is now. So there wasn't a lot of content out there. So I would just find one video somewhere, take it, find another video somewhere, and over time, just build that. So what I'm teaching you now is years of experience, right? So that way you have everything in one place. Okay, so as I was saying, copy the sequencer folder into the new migrated asset. Everything that is needed follows except the sequencer folder. So to prove my point, I'm going to close this. close both of them actually. I don't need to save. Close this. I'm going to delete this content folder. I'm going to cut this. I don't need the new project anymore once I'm done. So paste this here. I will get rid of this. Now let's check the size of these ones first. These new folders that have come back shouldn't be that much. Oh wow, so it's back pretty fast. That's interesting. So I'll delete these two as well. Oops, undo intermediate saved and derived data cache. Oh, no wonder. I was surprised. So I think I selected content or selected config. So with these three, you can see that before it was about 9 MB, it's now 135. So you can see it's climbing. The more you open the project, the more these three folders will increase. So I can delete. I think it's mostly derived data cache. Let me see. What's the size now? Okay, no. Anyways, these three combined. So I'll delete these three. And right now we've gone from 8 gig to 2.18. So this is the final project size. So if you're done with a project, this is the way I wrap it up and clean it up. Now I'm going to open it again to recreate those folders, which is fine. But let's just say that everything looks and works well. Okay, opened levels, apartments, and first time opening, so to do some minor calculations, and we are good. So let's test. Lighting still works, door works, and TV does not work. And that is because, did I myself forget something? Yes, so I forgot something. So there are two things, not one. Fortunately, I think I still have it in my recycle bin. So let me bring that back. The challenge now is, so fine, let's do some, let's fix this. The challenge now is I've already renamed, one second, apartment Unreal. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to rename this to content 2 so that when I bring the other folder, okay, I also have to close Unreal Engine. So let's fix that quickly. Try again. Okay, so I'm going to return or restore the previous content folder. So apart from the sequencer, very important, the other thing that doesn't follow is the actual video file that we used, right? So let me go back to the one that we're using now. If I go to movies, the video file doesn't follow. I can't believe I forgot this. Very important. So go back to content, movies, copy TV, open content 2, movies, paste it, and I promise you that's also your sequencer and your videos. Those two must be copied manually if you migrate. And if you're too scared, you can just you can just leave it. So I'm going to now delete content and then change this back to content and let us do the final test. One more thing, this will not, if I repackage the project, it will not affect the size. When you package it only packages what the game needs, right? It doesn't package. So if your main project can be 100 gig, and when you package it's 2 gig, and you can migrate and delete everything, and everything becomes 5 gig. If you package, you still get the same 2 gig. So packaging, this process doesn't reduce your package size, because when you package it only packages what the game needs to run when you package it. So just put that out there. Go back to apartments, and let's just test the TV again, and voila, working as expected. Yeah, this has been a journey. I'm really proud of what we've accomplished. I believe, like I said, this should help you pivot straight into Unreal Engine, get the best out of it. As always, if you have any questions on this series, even beyond, drop them in the comment section. I will be back in the future with, new content. I don't know when, but, this is just my way of giving back because I've learned a lot from YouTube and think it's just best my little bit of information is somewhere inside the ecosystem and hopefully more people find this and it helps them out. So with that, I am basically signing off. Go through everything, practice, 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 practice makes perfect. And I will see you when I see you. Peace.